The plastic cup hit the deck so hard that the entire backyard went silent. Not quiet silent, the kind that only happens when something nobody expected cracks the air wide open. A second earlier, my cousin Dale had been laughing so loud he nearly dropped his burger off the paper plate balanced on his knee. "Let me guess," he said, loud enough for half the party to hear. "They called you Princess?" I took a slow sip of my sweet tea before I answered. "Nightshade, that was it. Just one word." But the retired Navy SEAL standing near the cooler dropped his drink like he'd seen a ghost. The old man stared at me with pale grey eyes that suddenly looked 20 years younger and 20 years more afraid. "No," he whispered. Then he set down what was left of his plate, stood up straight, and saluted me right there in front of my entire family. That was the moment my cousin realized he'd made a terrible mistake. The barbecue was supposed to be simple. Just one Saturday, my Aunt Carol's 70th wedding anniversary party out past Asheville, North Carolina. Nothing fancy folding chairs, a country station drifting out of somebody's truck speakers, men arguing about a grill temperature beside a smoker full of ribs, kids running through the yard with melting popsicles. I almost didn't come. I hadn't been to one of these gatherings in nearly 8 years. Families remember things, especially the things that don't fit the story they've already told themselves about you. And in mine, I was mostly remembered as the strange one, the quiet one, the woman who disappeared into the Air Force and never really came back. Most of them assumed I'd pushed paperwork around some base in Texas for 2 decades. I never corrected them. It was easier that way. At 54 years old, I'd learned something most people only learn after enough funerals. Peace matters more than being understood. Still, Aunt Carol had called me herself. "Mara," she'd said, soft over the phone, "I'm not going to be doing many more of these, sweetheart. I'd really love to see you." So I drove the 4 hours, brought a peach cobbler, and promised myself I'd leave before sundown if Dale started drinking too early. Unfortunately, Dale started drinking before noon. My cousin had always been loud in the particular way insecure men are loud. He wasn't cruel, exactly, just convinced that volume and confidence were the same thing. He sold pontoon boats out of a lot near the lake and treated every conversation like a sales pitch he was winning. By the time I got there, he was 3 beers in and holding court near the cooler. "Well, look who finally got shore leave," he barked when he saw me. A few people laughed. I smiled politely. "Good to see you too, Dale. Boat business still booming?" I asked. "Booming," he said. "Inflation's the only thing sinking faster than my margins." That got a real laugh. I hugged my aunt, helped carry trays out to the folding tables, and mostly stayed quiet while everyone else argued about gas prices and college football. Nobody noticed. I preferred it that way. Around 4 o'clock, a grey sedan pulled into the gravel drive. A tall, lean man stepped out, white hair cut military short, wearing a collared shirt despite the heat in a way that told you he'd ironed it himself out of habit, not vanity. Even before my aunt introduced him, I recognized the posture. Combat veterans carry themselves differently, no matter how old they get. "This is Ray Castillo," my aunt announced, a little proudly. "He served with your Uncle Walt years ago. My uncle had passed 3 winters back." Ray shook hands around the yard until his eyes landed on me, and for half a second something shifted in his expression recognition, then confusion, then something quieter. I looked away first. I should have known right then the afternoon was about to go sideways. By early evening, Dale had moved from annoying to insufferable. He'd gathered a small audience near the cooler and was telling stories about his high school football days, like he'd nearly gone pro. I was sitting near the porch railing, watching the light go gold over the ridgeline, when he wandered over holding a fresh can. "So," he said loudly, "you ever actually do anything dangerous over there?" I shrugged. "Sometimes." "What's that mean?" "It means sometimes." A few cousins chuckled. He grinned wider. "Shoot any guns and all that?" "Occasionally." occasionally. His tone had that teasing edge men use when they think they've finally cornered someone quiet. I could feel Ray watching from across the yard. I should have let it go. Maybe because I was tired, or maybe because after 22 years I was simply done pretending to be smaller than I was. I answered honestly. I called in fire when nobody else would, I said calmly. Pretty boring, really. The group laughed anyway, the way people laugh at things they don't understand. Dale slapped the table. Oh, come on. I smiled into my tea. Then came the line. Let me guess, he laughed. They called you Princess. I looked him directly in the eye. Nightshade. The plastic cup hit the deck 1 second later. Ray Castillo had gone completely pale. Not shocked pale, haunted pale. The old seal stared at me like he was looking straight through 20 years of buried memory. No damn way, he whispered. Dale blinked. What? What's happening? Ray slowly crossed the yard toward me. You were the controller on the Sanguine relay, he said quietly. I didn't answer. You called in the strike that pulled my platoon off that ridgeline. Still silent. Ray's breathing had changed. My family looked back and forth between us, confused. Dale forced out a laugh. Okay, hold on. Somebody explain what's going on here. Ray ignored him entirely. He looked at me the way soldiers look at graves. I heard you were dead. The yard had gone still, except for cicadas in the trees behind the house. I set my glass down carefully. Not dead, I said softly. Ray's eyes glistened. My God, he whispered. Nightshade. Then, in front of my entire family, the retired Navy SEAL straightened his back and saluted me. And for the first time in his life, my cousin stopped talking. Nobody spoke for several seconds after that salute. Not even Dale. And getting Dale Pruitt to stop talking is, by itself, basically a small miracle. The evening breeze moved softly through the oaks behind my aunt's property, while everyone stared at me like I'd grown a second head. I hated this. I had spent 22 years working very hard to become invisible, and invisibility, once you've earned it the way I had, is not something you give up easily. Dale finally forced an awkward laugh. Okay, he said, glancing around. What exactly is going on here? Ray didn't answer right away. He kept staring at me with the kind of look veterans only wear around certain names. Finally, he turned to Dale. You have any idea who your cousin is? Dale smirked weakly. Apparently not. Ray nodded slowly. No, apparently not. My aunt looked deeply confused. Mara, she said carefully, what is he talking about? I sighed and leaned back in my chair. Nothing important. Ray shook his head immediately. With respect, ma'am, that's not true. I could feel every pair of eyes on me. My younger cousins had stopped chasing each other through the yard. Even the radio someone had left playing seemed too loud all of a sudden. Ray pulled out a folding chair and sat across from me. You really disappeared, he murmured. I meant to, I said. He gave a quiet laugh through his nose. People talked about you like you were a ghost story. Dale folded his arms. Okay, somebody better start explaining. Ray glanced at him. You ever hear guys talk about call signs? Sure, most call signs are jokes. Nicknames, dumb stories from Basic. He pointed at me. Not that one. Dale looked at me, then back at Ray. You're serious? Ray's eyes never left mine. Son, there were SEALs, Rangers, pilots men, who are alive today because of her. The yard fell silent again. I could almost hear people mentally replaying every assumption they'd ever made about me, the weird cousin, the quiet loner, the woman who lived alone outside Knoxville with an old truck and a vegetable garden nobody ever asked about. Dale scoffed lightly, trying to recover. Come on, you're acting like she's some kind of action hero. Ray's expression hardened instantly. No, he said quietly. Action heroes are fiction. That shut Dale up. My aunt slowly sat down beside me. Mara, sweetheart, what did you actually do over there? I looked down at my hands for a moment. At my age, your hands tell stories before your mouth does old scars, a faint burn line along one knuckle. I was a combat controller. I said simply, I talked to pilots on the radio and told them where to put the bombs. Ray corrected me gently. You walked into the kill zone to do it. I closed my eyes briefly. Still hated hearing it said out loud like that. Most civilians have no idea what that job actually looks like in real life. They imagine headsets and calm voices. Real war is mostly exhaustion mixed with terror, with your own heartbeat louder in your ears than the radio traffic. Ray leaned back slowly. Sangin, he murmured. Spring of '06. I said nothing. Dale frowned. What happened in Sangin? Ray looked out toward the dark ridgeline beyond the yard. There was a recon element pinned down after an ambush outside the valley. Weather rolling in, visibility dropping, enemy fighters on 3 sides. Several relatives had gone completely still. Command told air support to pull back. Ray continued. He looked at me, but kept talking to the table. One controller stayed on the net anyway. I stared at my glass. That wasn't bravery, I said quietly. It was stubbornness. Ray shook his head. No, it was courage. I almost laughed at that. People who survive things like that get called courageous by people who never had to feel how much fear was actually involved. Courage, in my experience, usually feels ugly and messy and completely undignified while it's happening. Dale still looked unconvinced. So what? She called in an airstrike. Big deal. Ray turned toward him slowly. Son, he said, that platoon was already being written off as a loss. That landed differently. Even Dale felt it. Ray gestured toward me. She stayed on an open channel in the middle of a firefight nobody thought anyone would walk away from. My throat tightened slightly. I still remembered the static, the screaming over the radio, the taste of copper where I'd bitten through my lip without noticing. Some memories don't fade. They just get quieter with age. She took 2 rounds doing it, Ray added. My aunt gasped softly. She still finished the call. Nobody spoke. Even the kids nearby seemed to sense something heavy settle over the yard. Dale cleared his throat. If all this is true, why haven't we ever heard about any of it? That answer came easily. Because I didn't want you to. Everyone looked at me again. I finally lifted my eyes. You know what happens after enough of that? I asked quietly. Nobody answered. You stop wanting credit for it. The breeze shifted across the yard. Somewhere down the road, a dog barked, a very ordinary sound. That's the strange thing about life-changing moments the world keeps moving anyway, completely unimpressed. Ray studied me carefully. You still blame yourself. I gave him a tired smile. Occupational hazard. He leaned forward. You saved that whole platoon. Not all of them. His face darkened slightly. No, he admitted quietly. Not all of them. That old ache moved through my chest again. Not sharp anymore, just familiar, the way an old injury aches before rain. My aunt reached over and touched my arm gently. Oh, Mara. I looked away. I'd spent 2 decades making sure nobody pitied me. Pity is dangerous in a different way than mockery is. Once people start feeling sorry for veterans, they stop seeing them as people and start seeing them as either a headline or a tragedy. Neither one feels like the truth. Dale shifted awkwardly by the cooler. So, he rubbed the back of his neck. Why'd they call you Nightshade? Ray answered before I could. Because no matter how bad it got, he said, she was the one thing the enemy never saw coming until it was already too late. Nobody laughed after that. Not one person. The sun had nearly disappeared behind the ridge now, painting the sky the color of a bruise healing. Ray kept watching me with that same unsettled look. Then his expression changed, not admiration this time, concern. Mara, he said carefully, why did you disappear after Sangin? My stomach tightened instantly. There it was, the question I'd spent 18 years avoiding, and the party noise around us faded into uneasy quiet, because the truth was that Sangin wasn't actually the reason I vanished. It was what happened 3 weeks after, on the relay nobody ever talks about, when the radio finally went dead in the middle of the last transmission I sent, right after I said,